Hey, folks, thanks for stopping by. If you are subscribed, thank you. And if you're not, I hope you'll subscribe and tell all your friends to do so as well. Uh, we've had 2 months now of Trump. It's worse than we ever thought it would be. I think that's an understatement, even though many warned us. But some of the experts who are very savvy about world affairs and when this sort of thing, dictatorships happen in other countries, even they are shocked by this. And that should tell you something. Over on Patreon, I have a podcast, Politics with Sherry Jacob, the same name as what I have here on YouTube. And this week I interviewed Rick Petri. He's done work all around the world. Um, went to Oxford. I mean, you look him up. You look him up on Twitter. Follow him on Blue Sky. He is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He grew up. His dad was a diplomat, so he spent time in Japan. And Rick does a lot of work in Turkey. So he's been very carefully studying how protests happen around the world. And what we had in our discussion when I interviewed him is that at what point will America conduct these huge protests? Now, there's been some in major cities around the country. They aren't getting a lot of press coverage. I've seen the foreign press covering them a lot better than our domestic media. And as I've said here in this space many, many times, we cannot trust or rely on American media to give us the news and the information we want. That includes MSNBC, unfortunately. So you have to find foreign media sources. And if you look for them, you can find them relatively easily. You know, the British press, for one. And then there are certain people on social media who will sort of flag this stuff for us. Like, as I've said before, our friend, he's at Chat Jazz on Blue Sky. He got off Twitter, but he is overseas, an expat, and he calls this together. He finds things but what the rest of the world is saying about it. It's not just the press, but if there's somebody, an elected official or in parliament or something that says things that apparently American lawmakers are still too afraid to say, he lets us know that. So that's pretty interesting. But it's foreign press that is doing this. So I'm looking at some of this stuff, and Rick and I had this discussion, Rick Petri and I, about what will it take in America. And I think that we are still kind of in denial. We're still this, sleeping giant, if you will, which is unfortunately one of the reasons why Khrushchev said we will crush America. We would take America from within without firing a shot. When you are the strongest and freest and best country on the planet, as we were before Trump, we tend to get, I don't want to say fat and lazy, but we do take it for granted. And sometimes it's hard for us to get our heads around the fact that this stuff could happen here. I think that's why Trump won. One reason, I mean, they cheated, but I think, with Elon Musk helping and Putin helping and the media helping and some other funny business going on. But we know that people just don't want to believe that this can happen here. And so when we start raising the red flags, when we start sounding the alarm about things that were happening with Trump, or things that weren't happening at DOJ when Merrick Garland was supposed to be on the stick and he wasn't, everybody thinks, well, there must be a good reason for it because our justice system is free and fair and they'll nab the bad guys. Well, guess what? There's also another saying that people who usually people in marginalized communities, you get the justice you can afford. So this business about our justice system is so great, it's kind of not. It's supposed to be, and it works out in the movies. And you only hear about those cases where that happens, but people get screwed over by our justice system all the time. And the reason Donald Trump was allowed to proliferate in New York and New Jersey with all of his crimes and cons and frauds was because the justice system there, people are corrupt, they're bought and sold, they're paid for. I found this out on a personal level in New York regarding Trump, and it's not what you think. Now, some of these people are great, they're heroes, and others have to follow orders. For example, if Jeff Sessions, when he was Trump's AG, wanted to order shuttering a certain FBI investigation from the New York FBI, he could get it done. And this can happen anywhere. And it does happen. It does happen. So we know that our justice system isn't that great. We tend to believe the TV version of it, or maybe how it used to be. There's always some corruption, but not at this level. So those of us who are tracking Trump and have been victims of Trump and have no delusions or illusions about what he is or isn't, I'm one of those. I've been on this case for 10 years. Um, People say things like, well, that's just tinfoil hat conspiracy, or you're just butthurt, all these things. Even people who are anti-Trump, or at least open to understanding how bad he can be, if they're independents, if they aren't a part of the cult, they are still so reluctant to believe it. Or if somebody who's really doing something nefarious and pretends to be anti-Trump, but really there's something in it for them and they have ulterior motives or some agenda. If they seem really nice, everybody likes them, or their clever tweets. And so we've lost our sophistication in terms of being able to identify people who are disingenuous, um, or people who are just out and out frauds and crooks, including Trump and his crimes. It is still mystifying to me how people that we thought were good people can be in the MAGA cult and be in denial about what Trump is, unless they are fine with what he is because they think they're on his team. They're in on the con. And we've talked about that a little bit. And I think there's a lot of MAGA who are like that. They know he's a liar. They know he's a con. They know he's hurting people. They know he's doing things that they're unconstitutional. But as long as they're on his side, they feel they're winning and they hate the same people until it comes back on them. And we're experiencing some of that now in MAGA land as we see people who are shocked that they're losing their jobs or they're being deported, that they aren't going to be able to get their Social Security checks or their veterans benefits. And so that goes back to my discussion with Rick Petri. When do people finally do these massive protests and do they matter? Well, I asked him, "Are we too much of a sleeping giant where it's going to take more here?" And he kind of agreed. And also, I asked, "What about our geography?" Geographically, the United States is huge, obviously, and so is it harder for us to get the millions and millions, tens of millions of people to descend on Washington and protest? And that is something that's difficult to do, but you can do it in major cities around the country. Okay, so if media won't cover it, if it's big enough, they have to cover it. But what gets people to that point? Um, and he said they basically get to the point where they can't take it anymore. When it does start affecting them, when it affects them, when it happens to your neighbor, you don't care. And that's the mindset of MAGA. But when it happens to them, and then they're going to start catching on that if Republicans, Trump, don't care about what their own MAGA base is saying, then that means that they intend to not have free and fair elections again. It will start sinking in. And I just have a hunch that there'll be a tipping point and then it goes, pretty big. And so Rick was talking about what's happening around the world. And he said, the Turks are doing it. With the massive protests. And the Israelis have been doing it for a very long time. And the massive demonstration recently in Belgrade basically resulted in shutting down the government. This can be done. And if you have a few favorite historians or super smart people who understand this stuff, have the global perspective of this, they will tend to agree that this is what it's going to take. That simply expressing yourself to your member of Congress, well, what if your Republican member of Congress decides that they aren't going to have any more town halls because a veteran, maybe who voted for them, is now not going to get his benefits, his VA benefits? That's problematic. So you have Republicans who simply won't hold town hall meetings. So I love the fact that Eric Swalwell and others, and you've got Tim Walz, they're going into these Republican congressional districts and they're holding town halls. And Bernie Sanders and AOC, what they're doing, they had the rally that had, many, many, many times over, like 8 times more people than they were expecting. I think they were expecting 3,000 and they got 23,000. So I hate to use the phrase "there's something happening out there" because we use that a lot during this last election, which I don't think I don't think Trump won fairly. Um, and there was something happening, but it wasn't enough because we needed to win by a lot. And as I've said before, once Trump was able to say, once Merrick Garland dragged his feet to the point where Trump could say, well, I'm going to run again, he effectively became the GOP nominee and was at that 50% point because we're a 50-50 nation now. We don't have landslides. And then when Kamala Harris was running, when Biden dropped out and he supported her, she was at that 50% mark. You start out essentially neck and neck, and then you're playing in the margins. And as I've noted before, her message was great. I'm a prosecutor. He's a felon. I know his type. The problem was Merrick Garland was not doing his job proving that he was the felon that he was. I mean, he was a convicted felon, of course, but on some of the big stuff that they needed to get him on, like January 6th and the documents case, he skated. So, and that was the only reason that he ran for president. And that meant that we were in a very dangerous position because that means that he will let Elon Musk and Putin do whatever they want and call the shots as long as he stays out of prison and he can become an oligarch. And folks, that is exactly what we are seeing. Here's the thing. I think that there are many Republican elected officials who are terrified of this. They're terrified of Trump and Elon Musk. They know what's going on. But unless and until Elon Musk and Donald Trump can assure them that they will have a reelection, wink, wink, meaning cheat for them, they still have to be concerned about what their own voters and constituents are saying. That is why we cannot let up. We cannot let up. Get in their faces, stop in their offices, demand a yes or no on if they will pledge and promise to support to preserve Social Security. No equivocating. Force them to answer. Do that instead of fighting with friends on Facebook, because this might actually have some impact. And then let's get to that point where we can have the massive demonstration. And Rick Petri says that dictators only overreach as far as we let them. They keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and they will take over. They will do this. They keep breaking the law. Trump is doing things that are unconstitutional. They do that until we, the people, stop them. And you don't stop them by conventional means anymore. We've never run into this situation. So what you have to do is look at what other countries do. And as Rick noted, Belgrade, they shut down the government. If Trump and Elon Musk continue down this path, that is what we will have to do. We will have to have a massive protest in Washington, D.C. And if we can't, we will be able to get millions of people in Washington, D.C., but we're also going to have them in different cities around the country. Maybe red states, swarm the governor's office or whatever we're going to be doing. We'll do it. We will do it. People are talking about this. I am very disappointed in the Democratic leadership in Washington. I've expressed that before. I had the idea that everybody glommed onto. Mark Cuban endorsed it. Michael Steele endorsed it. Everybody loves this idea, and it went viral. And that is for Democrats to have daily briefings in the Capitol, preferably led by Pete Buttigieg or someone equally as brilliant and who can attract the press. Now, here's the thing. The press are already in the Capitol building. It is already their beat to cover Congress, which is why you don't privately fund this and do it at the DNC, where press would have to walk pretty far to get there anyway. It's not that convenient to the Capitol. But in the Capitol building, fact check the White House, a daily briefing on par with the White House press briefing. The cameras are already there. You have a permanent room. You pay for this by assessing each Democratic office in the House and Senate. There's also some steering and policy committees that can fund it and get you a room, or a senator can give up their hideaway office in the basement of the Capitol building. Let's keep pounding this. The only reason they're not doing it is because Chuck Schumer and presumably Hakeem Jeffries are a little bit too threatened to have somebody else get the spotlight. But I'll tell you, Chuck Schumer is now under fire, as he should be. People in his party want him to step aside as leader, and they're right to do so. The fact that he has not embraced daily press briefings. And no, he's not the guy to do it because he represents the Senate. You need somebody to do this for Democrats in general. The fact that he's not doing it, I think that alone means that he has to go. I don't think I've said that publicly, but I just don't see him as long as Schumer is doing this. We can't do the things that we need to do to save our country. And I think saving our country is far more important than Chuck Schumer's ego or his political career. So, hope you agree with me on that.